The ocean, beautiful, vast, and often deadly. Beneath its surface, a world of unimaginable power and darkness waits. In this world, there are predators, creatures who have been alive for millions of years. And for a small town nestled on the coast, a predator has arrived. This is the story of Amity Island, a place where summer means sun, tourists, and the promise of a perfect vacation. But it's also the story of fear and the hunt for a monster that lurked just below the water's surface, a monster that, with every stroke of its powerful tail, reminded the people of Amity. It was no longer their summer paradise. This is Jaws. Music crescendos before fading to a tense silence. The first gentle waves crashing. The sound of laughter and distant chatter from a beach party. It was the kind of night that made you feel alive. The summer air warm, the sky painted with stars. On the beach, young Chrissy Watkins was carefree, laughing as she ran toward the waves. It was a night like any other, but what she didn't know was that it was the calm before the storm. Chrissy dove into the ocean, swimming deeper, her body gliding through the water like a swimmer lost in thought. But something else was in the water, something ancient, something hungry, a ripple in the water, a disturbance, a cold, silent predator, moving with lethal intent. The sound of Chrissy's breath becoming erratic as the water begins to churn. The first tug came fast, unexpected. She kicked and flailed in panic, her hands clawing at the water, desperate to break free. The predator didn't care. It pulled her under, dragging her to the depths. And just like that, the laughter on the shore turned to screams. The sound of screaming is drowned out by the roar of the ocean. The next morning, a body was discovered. What was left of Chrissy Watkins was washed up on the beach, disfigured, torn apart by something large, something powerful. Chief Martin Brody was called in. He had been the new face of Amity's police force, not yet accustomed to the quiet menace that could lurk in the deep. But now, he would see it firsthand. The town was in shock. The ocean, once a place of fun and escape, had become something to fear. Brody looked at the body, the work of a beast. But the mayor, an eager businessman more concerned about tourist dollars than the safety of his town, wasn't ready to accept the truth. It had to be a boating accident, they said. Nothing to see here. Life on Amity Island would go on. But Brody wasn't convinced. And when another attack came, there would be no denying it. The beaches were crowded. The sun hung low, casting a golden hue on the sand. The tourists didn't know. They didn't know that something was waiting for them in the water. And then, it happened again, a scream. Panic. Blood in the water. Alex Kintner, a young boy playing on his raft, vanished in an instant, pulled beneath the surface. His mother's desperate scream pierced the air. Dramatic pause, then escalating chaos and confusion. Chaos erupted. People ran, some into the water, some out, all in the panic of not knowing what had just taken place. The town was on edge. Something terrible was happening, and no one was safe. Brody could feel the weight of responsibility crushing him. The mayor still denied it. He was desperate to protect the town's economic lifeblood. Close the beaches? The summer was just beginning. But every second they hesitated, more lives were at risk. Brody made the decision. The beaches were closed. But the damage was done, a monster was out there. The search for the shark intensified. Chief Brody knew he needed help. Someone who understood the ocean. Someone who wasn't afraid to face it head-on. Matt Hooper was the answer. A marine biologist, young, energetic, and fearless in his quest to study the creatures of the deep. When Hooper arrived, he didn't waste any time. He assessed the damage, confirming the worst. This was no ordinary predator. The attack pattern suggested a shark. One with a hunger that could not be easily satisfied. That Hooper's eyes sparkled with knowledge, but there was no mistaking the urgency in his voice. This was more than a scientific curiosity. It was a matter of life and death. And then there was Quint, the seasoned fisherman, the shark hunter, the man who had lived and breathed the ocean for decades. He had hunted sharks before. He knew what he was up against. But there was something different about this one. Something personal. Quint's reputation preceded him. But his obsession with killing the shark was something darker. Something that made Brody nervous. Something that made Hooper, the scientist, uncomfortable, Still, the three men, Brody, Hooper, and Quint, joined forces. They would go out on the water, find the monster, and destroy it. But what they didn't know was that this was no easy fight. This wasn't just about survival. It was a battle between man and the primal forces of nature itself. Out on the water, the orca swayed with the rhythm of the ocean. It was old, worn, but it was a vessel of war. Quint had prepared for this. The shark, he said, would come for them. And when it did, they would be ready. The days stretched long. The sun blazed overhead, and the ocean was an endless expanse of blue. There was no sign of the shark, but the men knew it was out there, circling, waiting for the right moment to strike. Hooper and Brody grew restless. The tension was palpable. Each wave that broke against the boat seemed to bring them closer to an inevitable confrontation. And then there was a massive dorsal fin breaking the surface. The beast had been spotted. The chase had begun. Sound of the boat's motor revving, harpoons being loaded. The shark came at them with terrifying speed. It rammed the orca, sending the crew reeling. Hooper's calmness faltered for the first time. He was a scientist, not a fighter. But this was beyond science. This was survival. Quint's eyes blazed with determination. This was what he lived for. The thrill of the hunt, the chance to prove himself. But the shark was more than he had bargained for. It was smart. It was relentless. Each time they thought they had it, it slipped away. The shark was toying with them, circling, testing their resolve. Hooper descended into the water, ready to confront the shark in its domain. He was in a cage, armed with a spear gun, and yet there was nothing that could prepare him for the raw, primal power of the shark. The cage shook as the beast hit it with unrelenting force. Hooper fired, but the shark was faster. The cage was torn apart, and Hooper was left fighting for his life beneath the waves. The ocean, once a place of wonder, had become a graveyard as the orca slowly sank beneath the waves. Quint made his final stand. The boat was lost. Hooper was gone, and Brody was alone. But Brody refused to give up.